Hello, I'm Jan and I'm going to show you how to paint cats. I'm using cats that are well known to me and I've had plenty of opportunity to find them when they were still, not jumping over a fence. This isn't my cat, but it's sort of adopted me. I think it was sent out to hunt for food and it found me, so gave up. When painting an animal of any sort, always best to try and paint the eyes first, unless it's a long way in the distance, and the nose. And if you've got these three areas and the top of the head, you've got the definition. Now this dear little thing, who I call Fifi, because when I met her she didn't have any identification, is stalking things in my veg patch. She's got very green eyes. It's a job to get the exact shade. I'll do my best with a little bit of Viridian Naples yellow and cobalt turquoise or French ultramarine. And for her nose, I'm using Davy's grey, which is straight from the tube or pan grey, and I've made a homemade grey of French ultramarine, Brazilian crimson and yellow ochre, and between the two of them we should get something, but there's quite a lot of blue as well, so I think a little bit of blue on the nose just to get the suggestion. Now I'm going to draw everything the way that her fur goes. So having got the nose, which is lighter at the front, I'm going the way the bridge of the nose goes up to her eyes. And I'm going to not do it all solid. I'm going to change the two greys. So this is now the Davy's grey with a little bit of French ultramarine in. Go up to her ears. And then she's in dappled light, so there's not solid grey by the top of her head. If something is grey, you can always put an emphasis on a different shade just to highlight the grey. Now, inside her ears are slightly pink. Just slightly, which will show through warm when I put some fur in there. It's just very lightly done. And the nose is quite dark underneath, just because of the angle she is, I think. I found this cat living in my compost heap a couple of summers ago. We became firm friends when it started raining and I brought her in. She now treats me as a cafe. I'm sure she's well fed elsewhere, but she comes and just has a little bit and leaves. Now to get the exact definition of the ears, I've got to go around quite dark. I'm using Payne's grey here. And there's quite a dark line around her eyes, which has got to be done carefully. I was going to get the eyes to match. And dark round her nose a bit more. And then dark in the middle of her eyes. I can make nose darker, give it more shape, which we can do, make it more blue. Just going to feather that back a bit with some water. And then there's a line round her with the light catching the back of her neck that follows all the way round. So I'll just get some blue, and I'm not making a line because it's fur. I'm just doing a loose edge with the end of the brush, and the same on the other side. She's sort of hunkered down. Make the shoulder darker, it shows that, makes the head look lighter. Because she's hunkered down, her head's tucked in, so I'll just do some more dark hair to show the shape of the face. And then all disappears below her chin. I'll just feather that out so there's a nice line. And because she's surrounded by weeds and bits of, I'm not sure, strands of sweet corn or something, and some individual leaves that have gone to seed, I will just get some different colours in. The green will help highlight these. I'm just using a little bit of purple. A bit of purple on her nose. And she's not a very big cat. She's quite narrow at the back. I'm going to put purple in, just to feather it a little bit. Now before I do any more, I'm going to stick some foliage in. So I'm using Naples Yellow and Viridian. a little bit of ultramarine, similar colour to her eyes actually, the foliage. Just do some forgotten vegetables. And some yellow flowers just above her head. My veg patch is always a bit of a nature reserve, so she might have an eye for something. I'm just using a variety of greens. This is a homemade selection, and sap green. Let's put some plants in so that we can see that she's there. And some in the middle, and then there's some legs in shadow. Long pieces of grass. There's a little bit more detail gone in now. A few identifiable shapes like clover, the cat's collar. Cat never keeps the collars for long. I don't know why, perhaps a narrow hedge. And just build it all up gently. My next example is how to paint a ginger cat. Green eyes. Just a hint of green, because it's not a very close-up picture. And pink nose. And then it's a question of pink inside of the ears, just gently going in. And then working out the stripes. So the answer is to do everything as light as possible and then go over it again. So I'm making up very light yellow ochre, and I'm just going to go around the shape of the animal, separating the head from the body. It's not everything showing because he's snuggled down on a duvet. And then when this is dry, I can highlight it. It's claiming the space. When trying to paint a cat or a dog, it's always good to get them well fed and settled. I once spent some time trying to sketch a parrot. Agreed to go in the evening when it was well fed and towards the end of the day when it was quieter. I'm just going at random here because that's the way the fur will be going at random. quite a small head. The nose won't be all the same colour, so the answer is to leave it a little bit light on the tip, then it's easy to put something in. So I'm going to have to let this dry for a minute or two. I'm using a size 4 brush, and I'm just going to go round the ear with a little bit of yellow ochre mixed with some Venetian red. And I'm just going to highlight the shape. And then with some water, just gently lose the edge. Make it a bit softer. Now the other ear is in different light and it's not so defined, it's further away. So I'm just going to use yellow ochre to just gently go around it. And it's got a dark edge, so I'm going to just do a tiny bit. Just try and lighten it off a little bit because I want the hairs to show in there. Just to dab it back a little bit. I think the next thing is to do around the eyes to give the cat some character. So I'm going to gently do the middle of the nose, which is darker. And again using water just to give a soft edge because this cat's got very delicate colouring. A few vertical stripes up its head. And I'm just going to again use the water just to soften them. Because it is fur, it isn't a hard edge. And then a very light chin, and the only way to make the chin look lighter is to put some darker underneath it. And then go in with the stripes. Make him a handsome fellow. And the more distinct stripes along his back, I'm going to go in a bit wet on wet, because it's not like woven stripes on clothing, it is fur, and there's a definite colour change, but it's a lost edge, nothing too definite. So wipe the brush off clean, go back with the water and just soften it. It will drift to an edge. More water, just drift again. Cat starting to look striped. Now, a good example of this is the tail, which we can have a go at. It's very dark in places because it's in the edge of the duvet folds. It's got a little bit of natural shadow. Yeah, there's lost and found edges here, so the water can do the work. And also lost and found on the edge because it's under the duvet. And then quite a dark back, partly because it's away from the light. So again, water, just let it drift. Tail's quite spectacular. More water either side. So I'm just leaving the tail to dry, and when it's dried I will stick some example hairs on. I won't try and stick 100,000 hairs on it, however many hairs a cat's got, but just a select few. I'm just going to paint the inside of the ear a little bit. And I've got to suggest hairs coming out of it. I should be able to just pull a brush horizontally and it'll leave lines. And again on the whiskers. There's no real edge to this cat, it's just hairs that are coming off. So I've got very watery paint, Naples yellow, yellow ochre and Venetian red. I'm just putting some colours on. Just a wet brush to blend them in a bit, and the same with the ear. Blend it in a little bit so it's not quite so obvious. Work my way around the face. Slightly darker in the crease of the eye. And I'll just use some water to take that out again. And then follow the face round in a curve to try and give it the shape. It's not a flat face, it's a semicircular as it goes round the head. You've got to think of all the muscles that are underneath the fur, make the face move. And nice eyebrows going down to the eye. Same on the other side. Back of the neck, it's not solid but fur, so just gently give a soft edge. You just work your way around the stripes of the cat and the shadows. The head is much lighter. So I'm going to leave the nose white for now and do it last of all when I've darkened the eyes. Go the way the fur grows. It's not a solid line, it's a loose line. It goes round the curve of the cat's back. Around its hip. And dark leg underneath. One dark piece to the leg and some dark under there, and then the rest is light. The water will find its own edge. Now for the head, some very dark ears. I'm just going to use the water to take the facial marks down a little bit because I want them to be more delicate. I'm going to just put the middle of the cat's eyes in. Now I've got to consider the background, which in this case is a bedspread. So I'm going to get a bigger brush make some pink. There's alternate pink and yellow squares. It doesn't really matter which one's which because it's just a pattern. Cats always find the best place. other squares are creamy yellow, which I'm going to do to match the cat's lighter stripes so that there's some harmony between the two. That the cat's matching the background. It's always a good idea if you can use the same colour in a picture more than once. It binds it together. I've mixed a dark shadow out of French ultramarine and Payne's grey and just gone round the edge of the cat's tail where it's sunk into the bedspread, and a shadow from his head and under his chest, and a few whiskers. If you've got white whiskers on a cat, you can use latex, but it's a job to get it very fine, so giving a hint of a black whisker does the job. And just highlighted the eyes a little bit. This cat is at some distance and it's a oblique angle, so the eyes aren't too defined. I've sketched a cat in a wheelbarrow with some roses on Langton £140 paper, just with a soft pencil. I'm going to rub the pencil back a little bit, but I wanted to show you what I'm going to do. It's a nice galvanised wheelbarrow. It's a nice sunny day, so there's lots of bounced light. I've just lightly rubbed the edge of the wheelbarrow back with putty rubber, and I'm going to try and make a silvery colour for the galvanised metal, and the best way to do that is to use a combination of yellows and blues and greys, and then they bounce off each other. I'm going to start with mixing up a homemade grey, which is French ultramarine, Zillion crimson and yellow ochre. Then I'm going to use the blue on its own and some Naples yellow or lemon yellow. I think lemon yellow might give it more bounce. So to start with, I'm just going to wet the area of the wheelbarrow. Just round the edge. And I'm doing even with the water, I'm doing the brush strokes the way the metal goes. So it's going down. It would have been formed from a flat sheet into this shape. Not going too near the cat. So I'm going to go in with the blue, very watery, even more water, just to reserve the space. So now I'm going to drop in some lemon yellow, just very gently, just to sort of give the sheen of the metal as though the sun's catching it. And again, this is hardly any paint. Changing direction for the side. And if you get blue and yellow together, they can act sometimes, depending on the pigment, but most of the time they'll act like opposite magnets, and the yellow will send other paint away, which is very good for doing highlights. There's so many different paints made all around the world at the moment that I would suggest that you try yours before you think that it will work every time. So I'm just going to leave that to dry now, and you can see that it has already given an indication of reflected light. Having reserved the space by going round the wheelbarrow with a very weak mix of French ultramarine and lemon yellow, I'm just going back again just to highlight it, make it look a bit more silvery. Bare metal in sunlight, pick up all sorts of colours. You just have to look And trust your eyes, not your brain, because your brain will play tricks and tell you it's different. Just using water to feather that in. I don't want the solid edge. Now I'm going to drop in with a very clean brush some lemon yellow where the sun is hitting the front of the wheelbarrow. Just not get a solid edge. And then the left hand side's more in shadow, so I use some homemade grey on that. Let's give it a little bit of contrast, going round the roses delicately. I can sort out any lost edges later. And then where there's a curve of the sides, some slightly darker colour. Slightly darker, just slightly darker here, because it is an upright side. Wheelbarrow's quite deep. So I just use water again. Just lose the edge. By making that darker and that darker, it takes your eye to the lighter bit that's catching the sun. The sun's also catching the flat area here. So I'll pop some yellow on that. And the next job is to pop in the cat. So, as usual with any animal, the first thing is to paint the eyes and the nose. But the cat in this case is asleep in the sun in the nice warm wheelbarrow. So her eyes are only open a crack. So I'll go in very gently because I need to define them. This cat is grey and the wheelbarrow is silver. I did think about making the cat ginger, but I know the cat well, so I'll paint it the colour that I see it in my garden regularly. So I'm going to start with homemade grey, and I'm going to gently go around the ears. Wash the brush off. Then just go in with some water, lose the edge. It's the dark areas that highlight the light ones, so just go round and round. Do the other ear. And then again, water. Go into the middle, lose the edge. Lose the edge on the nose. Just keep going until you've lost it. Because you don't want any hard edges. I'm leaving the nose white to put some more detail in. I'm now working round. There's a lot of shadow under her chin. I've got number 4 brush, heavily loaded with the same paint, but it's not diluted with water this time. And there isn't a really defined line around her chin, so I'm going to clean the brush, but I've dried it off. I don't want any water. Just going to lose the edge a little bit. Make it a soft edge, not a hard edge. Then I can find that in a minute. Then there's more shadow around here. And then the colour gently eases off. So cats often, when they're snuggled down like this, look like they've got small heads. Just the way that they have got the ability to curl up. So I'm using water now, and I'm just pulling it out in the way the cat's curled up. Not too sure where the back line is. I might have gone over it there. I'll just take it back with my finger. It's easy to lose lines when you're doing an animal like this. There's a very dark line around to where her leg goes, but I'll put that in afterwards. So I'm now looking for things that are easy peasy. So I think the tail, and then that'll give the whole shape of the cat as a big, like, letter C. And then it's easier to put the middle bits in. So heavily laden brush, same grey, and go for the tail. I'm just pulling the brush out, make it look like feathers. No hard edge, it's just a cat's tail. And where the fur is going from the centre of the tail, let's go in the opposite direction. It's a little bit light there, so I'm going to go again. Now, her paws are quite different. There's a paw here, and it's dark in the middle. Then it goes much lighter. So what I'm going to do is to just add a little blue and yellow to the grey, and just so it's a different mix, and go round very gently. And a bit more water. And the same here. Darker in the middle. So it's clean the brush off, dry it, and then go in with the middle. And very short fur, and it goes sideways here. And then the back paw, barely visible. Much lighter top, so we go back to the mixture with more blue and yellow. And what I'm going to do is clean the brush and dry it. I'm just picking up the sides of the paw with the brush, drying the brush again, picking up any excess paint with the side of the brush, and at the very top where the claws are. And the same with the first one, just very gently. I'll leave that to dry for a moment, and then I'll put in other fur. Having let some of this dry a little, I'm going to return to the face, which I didn't really do very much of. It's very difficult. Every cat's different. This one's half asleep, but it's difficult to convey a cat's eyes when it is half asleep. So what I'm going to do is put the eye in before, and hope that that gives some degree of alertness before I put the semi-closed eyelids in. This makes it look a bit deeper. I've just got a damp brush. I'm just going to feather out the top and bottom. And she's got a very dark nose, that's in shadow, and the nose is just like a little heart, circular and then in. There's a shadow underneath it, and then her dear little mouth. And chin, which is quite light, so I'm going to try some Naples yellow to warm up the grey around her face. I don't know how old this cat is. Sometimes, if they're grey anyway, it's a job to tell. And a bit more fur might indicate a bit more personality. So I'm drying the brush, going in with the grey. It's a little dark for her face, so I'm going to add a little bit more blue. It's a question of putting in the cheeks but leaving a proud area around the mouth. An animal's face is very complicated, so you've got to make a decision and stick to it. I'm going to now go in for this side, balance it off. That's looking better. And then all these cats have got hair going up from the nose to the top of the head. So if you could put that in and spread it out, gives more of the shape. Then dry the brush again and bring it down onto the nose. This middle part of the nose is still white paper. I haven't done anything with that yet. And then some stripes around here. And the ears have got hairs coming out of them. So I'm not going to use latex or anything, it's a bit harsh. What I'm going to do is go with bold lines, and then even if it's dark, it indicates that there's hairs there because you'll see the gaps in between. I'm just going to take a bit of paint off, it's a bit too much. And then use water, just go in the middle a bit and lose them. And the same with this side. And they come over the ears because that's how a cat senses whether they can go through or not. And this cat's got quite a lot of dark in the bottom of the ear, which I might get in now. And dark round this side, which is in shadow. Quite pointy face. And dark under the chin. I want a mid-grey to do the side of the cat that's in the sunshine. So I'm just making up a slightly warmer grey, which I'm warming up a little bit with some Naples yellow. Not too wet a brush, but just follow the lines of the cat. You can always do 2 coats of paint. And there's a little bit of a red collar sticking out there. Which I'll put in shortly. This cat never keeps collars for long. And I'm just joining the edges. And It's a very light fur, just catching the sun here. I use some yellow again to warm it up. And around her ruff. A few dark hairs in a minute or two on top of that will join it all together. And then this light fur again catching the sunshine on her back. And then a very dark line up here, which I will just use a dry brush to pull out. I don't want it too harsh, I just want suggestion of it. Then our back leg, which is all grey, which I'm going to add some blue to because it's nearer us, so it will be a different tone. Because she's lying down, all the furs go in different directions. So I'm drying the brush off before I go in a second time with the Naples yellow. So you wash the brush, clean water, then dab it on some tissue to dry it so that you're not landing with a puddle and upsetting the balance of the paper. If you've got too much water in one area, it can backtrack and leave a little mark. In England they're called cauliflower marks. I don't know what they're called in other countries, but it's like it leaves a watermark. Now there's a very dark shadow where she's leaving a shadow on the wheelbarrow. To separate that from the grey fur, I'm using purple shadow. And it's got a fluffy edge because it's a shadow of the cat's head. If necessary, that can be gone over again. So now that's got to dry, and then the cat can be highlighted. And I can go around the eyes again. Now this wheelbarrow is on grass, so I'm just going to stick some grass in the background, which will focus on the middle. It's always a good idea to get rid of as much white paper as you can. I'm going to put some more paint on the wheelbarrow to bring the tones more in harmony. It is galvanised metal, which is very reflective, but it's too close to the colour of the grass, so I'm going to add some purple and try and balance it by adding a second layer of paint, which is light purple, on the inside of the wheelbarrow, and a little bit of warmer yellow at the end. It's brought it more in harmony with the colour of the cat. I will highlight the cat shortly when it's dry. I'm now going to give the grass around the wheelbarrow a second coat, and that will change the tonal values inside the wheelbarrow by making it darker. At the moment, the light green is picking up the yellow of the metal and the yellowy of the light grey, so I'm just going to make it a bit bluer and it'll change the emphasis on the grey cat. Grey cats are tricky. And because I've done the strokes down for the way the wheelbarrow is formed, I'm doing the grass sideways. I'm using a 3/4 inch flat brush. Just going round gently. And this green is Viridian with yellow ochre and crimson, just to make it different. So let's now change the values, that there's not a clash between the grass and the light metal, and it's making you focus more into the middle of the picture. I've now got a smaller flat brush, and I'm going to just, with a semi-dry brush, clean water, just feather the cat's face off slightly to make it a little bit lighter. I'm just going to work my way around the cat now, and if you get a flat brush and just lift off some of the paint, you can make some areas lighter, and in this case the lighter they are, the more forward they will appear. So I can just gently lift the cat to make it look more three-dimensional. I'm starting now at the back of her neck, just going to gently lighten off some of the fur. It's just catching the sun as the sun's coming over the edge of the wheelbarrow. Just gently lighten it. And again on the other side. Just gently touching it. Not going to use a tissue or anything, it's just the action of the brush. Clean it off. And going further into her neck. Under her chin I've already done. So now there's a little area catching the light inside her ear. And this is much better than using latex because you can be more subtle, more gentle. I just want her to have a little bit more of a rounded head, so I'm going up towards her ears the way that the fur goes, so always keep changing direction. So I'm working my way down now to where the sun is catching top, just a tiny bit on top of her head, and then it's catching the paw. So I'm going to go around the paw, and to make this different from the wheelbarrow, I will add a shadow when I've finished. You just have to be very gentle, not rush in. And the same with the other paw, just tiny bit of roundness on the edge. And the top of the back paw. And then the sun's also catching the top of her thigh. Right, actually, fur is going to the right. And then tiny bit across her back, which is going all directions. So I'm just going to go in very gently. You can always go twice, but you don't want to overdo it. When you lighten one bit, it can make another bit look lighter. It takes your eye round. A tiny bit on the tail if I can. So if you used latex, you'd have 100% white lines, which isn't what we want. We just want some graduation. I'll show you what's coming off on the tissue. It's not a lot. It's hardly anything, but it's just enough to make a difference. Now, to make the cat separate from the wheelbarrow, I'm just going to put some shadow with Payne's Grey, but you could use neutral tint or make a homemade shadow just around the front of her paws. Could use a dark blue shadow, which I think I will put some blue in it, make it look a bit better. It's a question of separating it from the cat. And then a little bit of shadow up her leg. And a tiny bit in front of the front paw. I'm going to try and lift a little bit on the back leg here. So that's the cat. So now the next thing is to put more emphasis on the flowers. While I'm thinking about the flowers, I picked up some green paint. Cat has green eyes. I'm just going to put a little bit of green over the eyes. She's virtually asleep in this picture, but you need to put some emphasis there. So I'll let that dry, and I'm now moving on to the roses, which is what I had the green for. I'm using sap green. I'm just going to emphasize the roses. There's not any detail required, it's just that you're looking at them from a distance in the wheelbarrow, and you need to know that it is a rose or a flower and not a tree branch. You just need to emphasize a little bit of something so that people looking at it will say, oh, flowers. And then the pink rose petals, you can make pink loads and loads of ways, but what I'm going to do is use some Mazzillion Crimson and some Chrome Yellow to warm it up. Because I've got other yellows and reds here, and I just want to really just make it sing a little bit from the colour I've already got. It needs to be warmer than the cold metal. I'm going to put some permanent rose in now. There's a different colour, just to send it back. I drew the roses in pencil just so that I could claim the space. So what I'm going to do now is just get the putty rubber and just gently touch them, get any pencil lines off. These roses might be all right if I just put darker metal around the area near them. So having taken the pencil out, I'll get some permanent rose and just go around the lighter areas. Permanent rose is virtually the same as Azilian Crimson. Anybody looking for it? It's quite pinky. And I've got this one here, which is a darker colour that I mixed up out of the crimson and the yellow, because you don't want every rose to be the same. And these are in shadow here, so I can put some of that dark colour on them, just to give some variety. You could always do one side of the rose light and the other side dark, just don't have to do everything exactly the same. I think now what I need to do is to look at the bottom of the wheelbarrow, where we've got actually metal struts. Which is every wheelbarrow is a different colour. And some more of it can be seen underneath. When you're painting, you have to work out what to put in and what to leave off, but this is good because it just shows what is there. We've got shadows underneath, which I can do in a very dark colour. So it's just a hint of the wheelbarrow. Now we go back to the cat, which I think the wheelbarrow needs to be slightly more blue underneath. So I'm just trying with a very light blue, just dabbing it around. So it's all coming together now. So with final highlights to go when that's dry. So there we have Fifi in the wheelbarrow. You can't expect an animal to stay still for too long, so you just have to grab the opportunity. She was quite happy in the warm wheelbarrow, sunning herself. She didn't mind a few plants going around. She knew there'd be dinner at the end of it. So this picture is now finished. I put a slight shadow around the flowers There's a higher shadow from the cat because she's much higher with the sun coming over the wheelbarrow side.